Hi, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying this course, and now it's finally time to start shooting our vlogs. So in this particular video, I'm going to show you step by step the exact procedure that I follow to record the shooting which takes place when I'm just standing still like this or maybe sitting. So I'll show you exactly the camera settings, how I achieve the focus on myself. I'll talk a bit about the lighting, and you'll be seeing this entire procedure of how I record my still vlogs like this. And then later on, we'll also be moving on to the more advanced stuff. But let's do this right now. All right, so now it's time to show you how I actually shoot my vlogs. So the part where I'm just standing and talking, because those are also going to be required. And later on, we'll be seeing the moving around parts also. So right now, you can see here, if I just go here, this is the camera and this is mounted on this tripod. You can see. Now there are two tripods and the cameras because ultimately I will be going, this particular camera will be recording the screen of this. That's how I will be showing you the settings. But usually obviously there's just going to be this one camera mounted on the tripod like you can see here. All right. And that area is obviously the area where I'm going to be going and standing. I'm going to be showing you how I focus on myself also just in some moments from now on. And of course this is the all-important video light that I'm using. I'm using a very old school halogen tube light. You also these days you get LED lights also, but basically you need a continuous source of light, especially when you're shooting indoors, because if you don't do that and if you don't have enough ambient light in the area that you're shooting in, your video will start to have a lot of noise and you don't want that. So lighting is very, very important. More information on that, do check out my course called Videography for Beginners, where we really go into the details of all this. Right, so this is how the environment looks like. I'm obviously wearing the external mic that I talked about before, which is the Lavalier Smart Lav Plus, which is on my shirt right now, and I'm recording it through the Zoom H1 recorder, which is in my pockets, right? So we are all set. What we're going to do now is we're going to go into this camera screen, and I'm going to show you exactly how I shoot. So let's go there. All right, so here I am using this particular camera, which is the Nikon D5300 for this video. So here's how my procedure really goes like. So first of all, we're going to select, when you're starting off shooting, you're going to select the settings for your video, which are mainly going to be two things. And all cameras will have different ways to access it, but you'll mainly be doing it through the shooting menu. And I'm going to go on to movie settings here, and there's an option which says frame size, frame rate. So this is where you select your resolution, which is your frame size, and your frame rate. All cameras will have different terminology for this. But basically, we're going to select, right now I'm going to select, most of my videos are shot at 1920 by 1080, which is your full HD resolution, also called as the 1080p resolution. And of course, if your camera has 4K, and if you feel like you have software, the editing software and a computer which can handle 4K, select 4K. But I'm guessing most of you right now won't have 4K shooting capability in your camera. So just select full HD. This is the next best resolution that you can shoot. It's very easy to work with also in the editing softwares. And the frame rate is right next to it. We have different options like 60, 30, 24. I'm going to select 24 right now because 24 frame rate gives you like the most natural looking video with the correct amount of blur. If you want to go in depth into what resolution is, what frame rate is, and when to use different types of frame rates, then do check out my premium course called Videography for Beginners, where we really go through everything, whatever you're learning right now in much more detail. But right, so this is selected now. And so the settings are correct. Then some cameras might have this option which says manual movie settings on. And in that case, yeah, you can just make it on so that, these settings will come under our control. All right? Otherwise, you can also shoot in the automatic mode if you don't have the capability to shoot in the manual mode. Right. Now, quickly about the settings, let me just switch over to live view so that you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So let me just adjust the frame a bit. I'm just going to loosen the tripod. I want the television and this corner shelf come up. So I think I like something like this. I'm not being too precise right now. I just want to show you how it's done. So you can see the corner table is coming as well as the TV is coming in the frame. Now it's time to adjust my settings. Your shutter speed is going to be basically, whatever the frame rate that you select, it's 1 by that frame, 2 into that frame rate. So we selected 24 frame rate. So your shutter speed is going to be 1 by 2 into 24. So that's going to be 1 by 48. 1 by 48 is not available, you can see. So we have to select the next best frame shutter speed, which is going to be 1 by 50. Now this is done because this is called as the 180-degree shutter angle rule. Again, I talk more about this in my course, but right now we're not really, this is a beginner's course. I'm just kind of going through the settings. So for example, let's say if you had 60 frame rate selected, then you select 1 by 125, because again 1 by 120 is not available. Okay, then your f-stop, I like my background to be blurred. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the f-stop to the least that it can go. I'm using the 35mm f1.8 lens, which is my favorite lens for videos because it gives me a wider look at 35mm. Also, it goes down all the way to f1.8, which is just going to blur the TV and that corner shelf behind when I ultimately come and stand in front of it. So this is done. But right now you can see my meter is telling me, the light meter, this is way too overexposed, right? You can see the screen is too bright because we've opened up the aperture also and we've got a very strong light. So I'm just going to decrease my ISO. That's going to be your last setting. Again, if you're not good with manual mode, don't worry about it. Just use the automatic mode of the camera after selecting the frame rate and the frame size or the resolution. Okay, I'm just showing this for the people who are aware about these settings like shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. All right, so this is done. Now let me just quickly, you can see now this has come back to a normal looking screen, and I like the look of this. And now is the focusing part, right? So also I just have to make sure my white balance is correct. So the white balance that I'm using here, you can sometimes leave it at auto, but I'm using a very strong yellow light here, the light that I just showed you. So with that, I like to use tungsten because that just nullifies its effect. And then is the all important focusing part, right? So what I like to do is, I like to just, first of all, now there are a lot of ways to focus, but the technique that I like to use is I like to set my the release mode to the remote mode. So I'm going to be using a shutter release remote, which looks something like this, okay? And then I just have to make sure that my AF area mode, okay, now this is going to change in a lot of cameras, right? This is the Nikon camera, but I'm going to select face priority. So you must be having an option in which basically you will have this face priority option, which as you'll see, what it'll do is it'll automatically, when I go in front of the camera, it'll focus on my face. And this will really help me focus on myself. I'm also going to be telling you about one more way later on if you don't have face priority, but let me show you this technique first. So I've set it to face priority. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in front of the camera. And then I'm just going to stand where I normally stand. I've marked that position. And then I'm just going to take a shot. We're using this remote. Remember, we've already set it to the remote mode. So I'm just going to take a shot with this camera. And you can see that the face, the autofocus is on my face because face priority is on. So now I'm going to take a shot. All right, so you can see that we've got this shot. I'm just going to check the focus on it. And you can see I'm happy with the focus. So that means now the camera is focused exactly where I was standing. And now what I usually do is I just press the record button like this. And now this video has started recording. And I'm just going to go there and stand and start talking. So this is how it's done. Right now the focus is on me. Now what if you do not have the face priority focus? Well, then in that case what you can do is you can do something very similar, like it's a very old school technique where you can just have something here, like maybe a light stand or anything that is slightly tall, and then you just focus on that particular object using your camera. And then once you've taken a good shot and you've checked that that particular thing is coming sharp, then you know that the camera's focus is there. You can even just to make sure, you can even turn your camera from autofocus to manual focus, so it'll stay locked at that particular position. But basically you're just trying to achieve the focus at where you will ultimately be standing, so kind of pre-focusing. And then you remove that object and then you just come and you start talking. It's slightly more tougher because if you have face priority, it's much easier because you just need to take a shot and then just start recording. So this is how I record my vlogs, in which I'm standing still, and in the next part we're going to also be learning about the times when I'm moving around. So I hope that you like this video. I'll see you in that one. Bye for now. Alright, before I end this video, I just forgot one thing to tell you, which is that this umbrella that you just saw, which is mounted on this light, now that's called a modifier, and there are a lot of different types of modifiers, but umbrella is usually the most cheap and the most accessible modifiers. I've given the link in the description of this video in case you want to buy. Now, first of all, why do you want to use a modifier? A modifier in front of the light, what it does is that it just softens the light. So, if you've done my photography for beginners course, for example, we talk really in depth about what hard light is and what soft light is. I even talk about that more into detail in my videography course, right? So do check those courses out also. But basically, soft light, which is what this umbrella does, it turns hard light into soft light. And what that means is that if you're shooting under hard light, that means if I were to just use this light without this modifier, it would just look something like this, like what you're seeing, and it just leaves a lot of bad looking shadows and the highlights, and it just looks very unpleasing to the eye. But whereas if you put this, you can see that it makes a great amount of difference, and everything just looks very nice and pleasant to the eye because the light is basically soft. So right, that's why you use this umbrella modifier, and that's why I'm using it here. Also, one other thing, if you're not using a light, like I mentioned before, and you're shooting indoors where the ambient light is too less, then what that means is that your camera will increase the ISO value, either automatically, or if you're doing it manually, you will have to increase the ISO value. And when you increase the ISO value, you must already be knowing that it gets in a lot of noise or those bad looking grains in your footage, like you can see here. Okay, so you don't want to do that. You should shoot an ample amount of light. Therefore, it's very necessary to have a separate light, especially when you're shooting indoors. Because of course, if you're outdoors, you have a lot of light. But if you're shooting indoors, you should get a light. And to make that light look good, you should get a modifier. So I just thought I'll mention that. We'll move on to the next video. Bye for now.